Hey everybody, it's Lisa with Quilting in the Valley, and today I want to talk to you about Accuquilt. So what is Accuquilt? What do you use it for? What's the benefits? And how do you get the best use out of your dollars when you've purchased the Accuquilt system? So the first thing I want to talk to you about is, what is it? What is an Accuquilt? So the Accuquilt system is either a manual or an electronic fabric cutting system. So it is not like a Cricut or a silhouette, a cameo silhouette. Those are for paper crafts and for single layers of fabric. This is specifically made to cut fabric for your quilts. You can cut up to 6 layers of fabric at any given time on these dies easily. I have in front of me the GoBig electric cutter. So that's this one right here. The GoBig has got a wider throat here, so we can get the bigger dies through it. There is a manual cutter that has a hand crank on the side of it that you would crank your dies through. And then there's a GoMe, which is a little bitty guy, and that is fun for the cubes. You can use cubes in that, or some of the smaller geometric dies or applique dies. We'll get into all of those in just a minute. But in the meantime, this is the GoBig cutter. The GoBig cutter is an electronic cutter, and it is very easy to use. It has got nickel-plated rollers on the inside. It is safe. I can put my hand in there on those rollers and it doesn't squash my hand because it knows the difference between a die going through and your hand going through. So that's kind of cool. The dies themselves, and there are lots of dies, and we're going to get into the different types of dies in a minute, but the dies themselves, this particular one is the 2.5-inch strip die. The blades are down inside this kind of foamy stuff. So while you wouldn't want to put your whole weight down on top of this, you can wave your hands around on it. You're not going to cut yourself. You can put your fabric on this and send this through the cutter and absolutely nothing will happen. It's this that makes it cut. So this is a plastic cutting mat. You put that over the top of those blades, and it's the pressure from the nickel-plated rollers pushing this into the blade over these foamy things that makes the blades come up and cut your fabric. So that's kind of how it works. I did tell you that you can cut 6 layers of fabric at a time, and of course cutting 6 layers of fabric at a time is going to save you a ton of time in cutting. The other thing that it does is it cuts absolutely perfectly. It cuts accurately every single time, so you never have a miscut, which will save you fabric in the long run. We've all made miscuts. It's the nature of the beast. When you're using a ruler and a rotary cutter, you're going to have a miscut. You never have a miscut with an Accuquilt. The other thing that you've got is you're going to save a little bit of time because an Accuquilt system cuts all your dog ears off ahead of time. In addition, when you go to put your pieces together to sew them, those dog ears being cut off allows you to line your pieces up exactly, so you no longer have to guess where your quarter square triangle lines up with your center square or your half square triangle. You never have to guess how to line up a triangle on a square or vice versa, because everything is cut to match to begin with, so everything lines up better. There are several different types of dies for an Accuquilt system. So this particular one that I've already shown you, this is a strip die. This particular one is a 2.5-inch strip die, and they come in all different sizes. So you can get all the way from 3/4 of an inch finished, which is a 1 1/4-inch unfinished, to I believe the biggest one is a 6.5-inch unfinished that you can get at this point, and everything in between. And they will cut these perfect strips for you. The good thing about these perfect strips that they cut is if you're rotary cutting and you open up the strip, you typically right at the fold get like a little hump. An Accuquilt does not do that. It's perfectly straight all the way along the strip. So that's kind of cool. You can cut with 6 layers of fabric. That means you can cut 3 with the fabric cuts, with the fold on them. You can cut 3 of those at one time on this 2.5-inch strip die, which gives you 9 2.5-inch strips, which is basically the binding for a queen size quilt in one pass, and they're all perfect. So that's a strip die. Lots of things you can do with strip dies. I'll show you more in a little bit. Another thing that you can get with Accuquilt, and there's lots of these. This is called a block on board. A block on board is a die that cuts all of the shapes that you need to make this block in one pass. So you don't have to get different little dies like the Qubes have. You don't have to get, you know, like I need this half square and I need this diamond and I need this. You don't have to have separate dies. It's all one die. It cuts all of those pieces all at once. Another thing you can get is applique dies. Applique dies, you would put your fusible, if you use fusible, you put your fusible on the back of your fabric, and you can cut up to 4 of those at a time with the fusible on them through your Accuquilt cube system, and they will cut them all perfectly the same with very nice curves, especially the curves. So this would be hard to scissor cut and get perfect, but you can get it perfect with an Accuquilt. Additionally, if you sign up for an account with Accuquilt on their website, you can get free embroidery downloads. So there's a satin stitch, a blanket stitch, and a zigzag stitch that you can get your choice of to stitch down the edges of these, which is really kind of cool. So it includes a placement stitch, machine embroidery placement stitch, then you put your applique down, fuse it in place, and then you do your finishing stitch. You can also purchase some more advanced embroidery designs to go with these applique dies. Another type of die they have are the geometric dies. So this particular one is different sizes of hexagons, but you can get squares. You can get a whole die that is nothing but squares. You can cut lots and lots of squares at one time. You can get a whole die that cuts nothing but half square triangles, so that you can cut, you know, literally dozens of half square triangles per layer of fabric. You can get circles. You can get diamonds. You can get any kind of geometric shape. And these are all individual. The really cool thing that we're going to spend most of our time focusing on in this particular class is the cube system. The cube system comes in a box, and they come in multiple sizes. So you can get a 4-inch finished block size, 5-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, 9-inch, 10-inch, or 12-inch. So there's 7 different cube block sizes right now. So a cube, this is an 8-inch cube, has 8 dies in it, and these 8 dies are all numbered, and they all come in these little pouches that show you where everything is, and they tell you what the shape is, and they're all based on a 4-patch block design. So if you were to make an 8-inch square block and you divided that into 4 quadrants, all 8 of these dies would work together to make one of those quadrants. So that's how this works. The cube system, if you got just this one cube with these 8 dies, you can use these 8 dies together, and you can make 72 different blocks with just these 8 dies. Now, of course, that is based on a 4-patch design. If you should choose to get a little creative and do a 9-patch design, well, then the sky's the limit. You can go way further with these dies and make lots more blocks if you were to do a 9-patch design. I'm going to show you one of their little marketing pieces of paper, collateral, that will show you that's the 72 blocks that you can make based on the 4-patch design with just those 8 dies. Now, they came out with a couple of other things. They came out with a companion, a companion corner set. Your companion corner set, again, based on that 4-patch design, includes 4 more dies. So now you're up to 12 dies, all working together to make an 8-inch block. Now I can make all 72 of these and all 72 of these. So now I'm at 144 blocks that I can make. Then they came out with the angle set. And the angle set is another 4 dies. Again, all working to make that 4-patch design to make it, in this case, an 8-inch block. So now I can make these 72 and these 72, and now I added these 72, so I'm at 200, and I think it's 214. I may be adding wrong, but I think it's 214 blocks, all with these 16 dies in varying combinations. Again, if you change that into a 9-patch, well, you just expanded your horizons tremendously. You can go a lot further if you do a 9-patch. So in a nutshell, that is what an Accuquilt system is. So what you use it for and some of the benefits that you can get out of it. I am going to show you how to use the cube set in our next segment. Okay, we're back. We're going to talk about this cube system and how you use the cube system. So I actually have a quilt that we're working on. We have a new book coming out, and all of the quilts in it were written for Accuquilt cutting. So, well, both. We have rotary cutting directions and Accuquilt cutting directions and fabric requirements for both. So on the cube set, I think I've already mentioned that the cubes come in a 4-inch finish block, a 5-inch finish block, a 6-inch, an 8-inch, a 9-inch, a 10-inch, and a 12-inch. And then, of course, there are 8 dies in the cube system. Those 8 dies are these right here. So you have a quarter square, quarter block square. You have a 1/16 of a block square. You have a half square triangle for a quarter square. You have a quarter square triangle for a quarter of the square. You have a half square triangle for you would put 4 of them in 1 quarter, and then you have a square and square. You would use that around the outside edges. And then you have the parallelogram, and you've got a rectangle. All of these blocks or dies work together to make different blocks in quarters. So like that's a quarter, 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 and those would all be 4-inch finished in this instance because this is an 8-inch cube. So these would all be 4-inch finished quarters. When you put them together, you get the 8-inch finished block. If you were to go with a 9-patch, so say do a Jacob's ladder type of a thing with this, you would then end up with a 12-inch finished block, right? Because you're going to have 4 plus 4 plus 4. 4 plus 4 plus 4. So with this cube, you can make either an 8-inch finished block or a 12-inch finished block. Okay? So that being said, your dies in the cube look like these. Now I have these 3 pulled out because these are the ones that we're going to use with the quilt that I have pre-cut. Yes, you are going to pre-cut. So what you do is you pre-cut your fabric to extend over the edges of the blades by 1/4 of an inch or less on both sides, and then you're going to figure enough to fan fold your fabric to get 6 layers, and that's the most efficient way to do this. So I have already pre-cut my fabric down in here, and I'm going to get a piece of fabric out and show you how I would do that. I got to determine which piece of fabric we're going to do first. We're going to do fabric number A, the 3.5 inch, which is this one right here. So what I've done is I have cut my width of fabric strips, and then I have subcut it so that it's only long enough to get 6 fan folds. On this particular one, I'm going to use die number 5, and die number 5 is this one, my quarter square triangles. So all I have to do here is place that just over that, and then I'm going to fan fold. Just like that. I'm going to put my mat on, and I just push it into that die, or the cutter. And it's going to come out the other end. Before I take this off, I'm going to slide it slightly so that the static doesn't keep all my fabric on this mat. And then I can pull off all of these, and now I have got 12 quarter square triangles. And they're perfect. And remember when I said that the dog ears were already cut off so that you could have your match points? Well, there you go. Those dog ears are all cut off, so there's no additional labor for you to do once you've pieced these. And you can see how absolutely perfect those are. So that is on the quarter square triangles. If I wanted to do the square, that's this one. Let me see which one I'm going to use the square for. The square is die number 1. Well, and I shouldn't have die number 1, I should have die number 6, which is this one. So I have the wrong square. We're going to get die number 6 instead, which is not in here. We're not going to do die number 6. Go figure. We're going to do the trapezoid, which is die number 16 from one of the companion sets. So die number 16, I am going to take my 2.5-inch strip of my burgundy fabric, or this one, we'll use this one. And on die number 6, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to line that up like that, and then I'm simply going to fan fold. Now all of this fabric has been pressed ahead of time. Okay. And it feels like I have a little fold. I do. There. I'm going to put my mat on there, and I'm just going to press it right into that die, or the cutter. And there goes my waist. I could reduce the waist on this by cutting one, then flipping the strip, cutting another, flipping the strip, cutting another. I choose not to do that because that just takes too long. So on this piece, with this piece, when I go to put these together, that's how I know those are centered. Everything lines up absolutely perfectly. Okay? So hopefully that makes a little sense to you. And I don't know what happened to my number 6 die. We're going to have to dig in the drawer, find what happened to our number 6 die, but I'm not going to show you the number 6 die. Now, you may ask, how did I know how to cut what size strip and how long to subcut those strips for? Well, I know that because we've actually written a chart that will help you figure that out. So if you were to look at, say, you pulled out a Bonnie Hunter pattern, and her pattern asked for you to make 2 7/8 inch squares and cut them in half for half square triangles, then you would simply go right on here on this chart and you would find 2 7/8 inch for your rotary cutting. You would go right over here and you say, well, an 8-inch cube will do that. Die number 5. I'm going to cut a 3-inch strip, and I'm going to subcut it 3-inch by 22.5, and that's going to get me 12 half-square triangles. And we've written this chart to accommodate all 16 dies in the Accuquilt cube system. So for all 16 dies, it's going to tell you what the rotary cutting size is, what the finish size is, what size cube you use, which die you use, and how big you cut the strips, and how many you get out of one cut. So that's how we knew how to do this. And our new book with the 12 new patterns for Accuquilt will all be written using those measurements. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of quilts that we made using this Accuquilt cube system so that you will know exactly what they look like. So this is one of them. This is called Tangerine Twist, and it's just the quilt top. We just got it done. Again, it's going to be in our newest book. This entire quilt was cut out in about an hour on an Accuquilt cube system. Everything went together just absolutely perfectly because all of those dog ears are cut off for you, so your match points are all there, and there are no miscuts. Additionally, I didn't show you this, but on this particular quilt, we used the finishing die. So there is a finishing die that you can get for each of the cube sets if you're setting your blocks on point. So this was a 9-inch cube that we used to make this one, and the setting die was a 9-inch setting triangles die. That's one example for you. Here's another example of another of our quilts in our new book that we made with the cube system. Let me get it unfolded here. And this one uses the chisel. And the chisel is this little pointy on one end, square on the other end piece, and that comes in one of the companion sets. Your chisel is in one of the companion sets. So it's using lots of the dies from both the cube and the companions. When you put those together, you can make some absolutely stunning quilts. So those are some examples of things you can do with the cube. We're going to come back in just a minute, and I'm going to show you exactly how to use the strip die and some of the things you can do with the strip dies that may expand your horizons. We'll see you in a minute. Okay, we're back, and now we're going to do some 2.5-inch strips. I'm going to show you what you can do with this 2.5-inch strip die. So just like on the cube systems or any other of the Accuquilt dies, you're going to cut your fabric just a little bit, so 1/4 inch, and you know, I could have actually gotten even to 1/8 of an inch on this. When you put your fabric on a strip die, you got to make sure that you don't cross this black line. The blade doesn't go past that. And then you want to look down here and make sure that your blades come past where the end of your fabric is as well. And you always press your fabric before you do these. Now I'm only going to send 2 layers of fabric, or 1 with the fabric cut through right now. I'm going to put my die on. One of the things I didn't tell, not my die, my mat. One of the things I didn't tell you is that these mats will wear out. So people will ask all the time, when does the die wear out? Well, it doesn't. What wears out is the mat. And if I were to, say, line this mat up exactly like that on this strip die, and every time I sent this through the cutter, I sent the mat like this, it would eventually cut through the mat. So what's important to do is to kind of just offset it. Every time you send it through the cutter, offset it a little bit so that you're cutting across the width of this mat. And that's very easy to do because you only have to have this just past the blade. So I could offset that like that, and then the other way. Right now I'm just going to send it through so you can see how nicely this cuts strips. So again, we're using the GoBig cutter, and this table that I have on here, we had these made. This is a Sew Steady table that extends out past the Accuquilt GoBig. So we had it made specifically for the GoBig. It is the width of the GoBig, and it holds this die so I don't have to stand here and catch these dies as they come out the end. Which, if you're doing a whole quilt and you can, on a GoBig, on the cube dies, you can send 2 dies through at once. So it's really nice to not have to catch them. I can send 2 through and start working on 2 more and just keep feeding them through without having to catch them on this table. Okay, so I kind of slid that off so that I didn't get static. I take my waist off, and I remember that I told you earlier about that hump, how straight the cut is, where the hump would be. And normally you don't get that when you rotary cut. Okay, so I could have done 3 with the fabric cuts on this die all at once. But there's other things that you can do with this die. What if you needed an absolute ton of 2.5-inch squares? Well, you cut your strips, and then you come down here, and you fan fold 6 layers with cotton. So I can do that, and I could put another strip, and 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 then I could cut literally over 100 2.5-inch squares in one pass. And they're all perfect. They're all exactly the same size. The other thing that I can do, if you see on this die, there's a 60-inch or 60-degree line, there's a 45-degree line, and there's a 30-degree line. If I take one of my strips that I just cut and I place that, ensuring that both ends of my fabric over here, so here and here, cross this line where the blade is. And then I come up here and I ensure that it does the same thing. This one I really can't turn back. And I put this through like this. That is going to give me diamonds. And it's going to give me enough diamonds. I'm going to get 2, 4, 6 diamonds to make half of what will take 12 of these to make a star. If I put it like this on the 45-degree line, I can actually cut a few more on that line. And actually, I will show you that. Do the same on the 60-degree. The 60-degree line is going to come out with 6 of them going together to make one star. So let's show you how that works. And again, this Accuquilt table is just awful nice because I don't have to stand there and catch that die as it comes out. It just comes right out and slides on its little house until I'm ready for it. So imagine this whole die was full of 2.5-inch strips. You would just cut so many squares there. So I'm sliding this off. And here are those wonderful diamonds I just told you about. So now I can make a star. And of course, if I had different colors of these, I would just work my way out in a row with these like so. Make your own lone star there. And that's with a 2.5-inch strip die. How cool is that? And then, of course, my 2.5-inch squares, my stack of 2.5-inch squares is right over here. So I have got a whole stack of perfectly cut 2.5-inch squares. So those are a couple of things you can do with the 2.5-inch strip die. There's one more thing that I want to show you that you can do with the 2.5-inch strip die, and that is to make bias binding. I don't know if you knew you could do this, but you can. Make the bias binding for a queen size quilt very easily with your Accuquilt. So what you're going to do is you're going to use your 2.5 or 2.25, however big you like your binding. You're going to take a 1/2 yard of fabric. You're going to press out the center seam, and then you're going to fold the top right corner down at a 90-degree angle, and you're going to fold up the bottom left corner at a 90-degree angle. So you are in effect making a parallelogram. Once you've done that, you're going to take the top right fold and you're going to place it just over the blade, like so. Then you're going to take the bottom left fold and you're going to fold it up till they match. Then you're going to take this right point side that you have and fold it in like so. And now see, I have extra die left here, so I'm just going to pull this down, not over that black line, but I am going to pull it down. And then this I'm going to fold in this way. And you just make sure that you have everything straight, like so. So now I don't have more than 6 layers of fabric anywhere. I'm good. I'm going to put my mat on, and you can see this was a brand new mat when I started. I hope you can see. I have 2 different cut lines on it right now where I cut 2 times, one on this place and one on that place. So I'm going to make sure that I'm moving that again so that I get a 3rd cut line. That'll make that mat last so much longer. Additionally, I can flip it over and I can use the other side to make it last even longer. So here we go. We're coming out at the other end again. And what you're going to find when I get all of my waste pulled off here is that my angles are all cut so I can join them properly because I folded everything in. Again, I'm going to slide that off so that I don't pull static. I'm going to get rid of my, whoops, I was just too close to the edge there. Just a smidge too close. And those aren't going to do it. but these will. And that just highlights how important it is not to go past that part. And I must have gone well past it. I must have slid it before I put it in. Okay. So there you go. I got my waste off. Now, when I unfold all of these pieces, I've got my bias. And if I take this second piece off, look at there. And if I take this piece off, let's see, this piece off, it'll go here. So these ends will all line up nicely so that I can then make a beautiful bias binding for my queen size quilt. I have lots of strips of bias binding here. There's some little ones that you're probably not going to use, but all the rest of these you're going to use. Lots and lots of strips, and all of those ends are going to fit together very neatly. So I have a whole stack of bias edge binding. And of course we use bias edge binding for all of those curved and funny shaped quilts. All right, that is a cool thing you can do with your 2.5 inch strip die. And then just for, you see there's my third line on there. You see how they're nicely spaced? So every time I send this mat through, I'm going to move it a little bit. And you do that with the small mats as well. All right. Where do you get an Accuquilt? So you can get Accuquilt online. So Accuquilt.com has a website, and you can get stuff from them. But I highly encourage you to support your local quilt shops. So if you have a quilt shop that carries Accuquilt, you would be doing them a huge favor by supporting them and purchasing this product from them. Additionally, you're going to get hands-on education from that quilt shop, which you're not going to get from an online retailer. And you're most likely going to get the exact same price because we are able to support all of the promotions that Accuquilt does on their website. So highly encourage you to purchase from your local retailer, your independently owned quilt shop. The money that they take in goes back into their local community, and it makes a huge difference in everyone's lives in their communities. So support your local quilt shop. If you would like more information on this Sew Steady table, we have them available. You can get a hold of us for that. If you would like our Accuquilt conversion chart, you can get a hold of us for that as well. In the meantime, if you've got an Accuquilt, get it out of the box and play with it. Start using it because they are so nice. The quilts come together so beautifully, and they save so much time and so much fabric. And oh, get your Accuquilt out of the box. Let's use it. Okay, we'll see you next time.